The global food security situation and outlook remains delicately imbalanced due to the complex interplay of social, economic, and ecological factors. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic and the unabated Russian-Ukraine crisis, the worsening food crisis is leaving millions at risk of hunger and malnutrition globally. With the disruption of food supplies arising from the Russia-Ukraine war, Africa now faces a shortage of at least 30 million metric tons of food, especially wheat, maize, and soybeans, imported from both countries. In a swift response to averting a looming food crisis in Africa, the African Development Bank, AFDB, has approved a $1.5 billion facility to help African countries improve agricultural productivity and ensure food and nutrition security. Well, to discuss this development and other issues around food security across the globe, I'm being joined live from the United Kingdom by a researcher and agribusiness economist, Dr. Matthew Ojo. Good afternoon, Dr. Ojo, and a happy birthday to you. Thank you for joining us today, your birthday.
Thank you very much, Tolu. It's nice to be here once again.
Yes, agric plays a very important role, agriculture in its totality of any economy. But I'll ask you this way, you know what is happening down home that is getting to that time where it's politicking all around. Now, what do you think should be the focus of any candidate or whoever eventually becomes the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria with focus on the agricultural sector? What are the quick wins for us as a country?
Well, thank you for that question. I think it is important for the candidates to understand that they want to be president of a country that has around 70.8 million hectares of agricultural land. And that out of that agricultural land that we have, 38 million is for arable land, is arable. You can plant crops, you can plant cereals, you can plant all you want to plant. And as at now, only 6.5 or thereabout is used for crop production. It is important for the candidates to know that according to the United States Department of Commerce, that as of 2021, says that Nigeria needs around $10 billion worth of import to be able to meet both our food and agricultural production. It is important for the candidates to first understand the background that there is insecurity in this country that is affecting food production, and then the food map of the country, the way it is now, is distorted. So if they have that understanding, the question I want to ask is, what plan do they have to address, first, to take advantage of the potentials that we have in terms of agriculture as a country? 34 million hectares of land. We are the 9th country with the largest arable land in the world. Even Ukraine that you just mentioned now is 10th below us. And this is the same Ukraine that we import wheat, we import whatever from. So what I will ask them is this, beyond addressing us generally, because that's the trick politicians use. They just tell you, I will increase food production. How? So I will expect that they get down and look at the potentials of this country and look at the current problem. How do we sort this so that Nigerians get out of the hunger trap in the next 4 years, in the next 8 years? This is not just asking the Ministry of Agriculture to come up with a plan. You and I know the various agricultural plans we've had in this country. Nothing comes out of it. I'm sorry to say. So I will expect that they will sit down. Guys, I want something, a plan that will bring this country out of this food insecurity. I want my people to be food secured in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. Get the ministry together, both states and federal, call experts and say, I don't care how you guys do it, I just want a plan. And that plan is not just the one that we write on paper. Carry out simulations, models, look at different scenarios. If this one doesn't work, this one should work. Such that each of these candidates should have a plan to get this country into a position where we'll be food secured in the next 5, in the next 10, or in the next 15 years. See, the African Development Bank can make monies available, and you and I also know this. It's not just about monies being spread around. It is how these monies are utilized. All right? What plan do they have concerning the research institutes in the country that are almost moribund? Okay, what plan would they put in place to ensure that the food security insecurity we are experiencing is not worsened by the state of insecurity generally in the country? Because where we normally will produce food from are being threatened. People don't go to farms as they used to do. Now we're going to be importing more than we have always been imported. So everybody comes to the city. Now the question is there any plan for urban agriculture? So I've listened to some of these candidates before now. What these parties just come up and just speak generally. I think Nigerians should start troubling them. We don't want to hear any general statements again. In terms of agriculture, how will you ensure that we are fed in this country? How will you ensure that household? See, there are countries that you have 5% of them involved in agriculture. 70% or even more of households in Nigeria are involved in farming, and yet we can't feed ourselves. And these politicians come with their barbaric guys and agbadas and start telling us lies. So it's high time we started asking them questions that would trouble their minds and get them to sit down to come up with plans. What plan? APC, PDP, or whatever party, what plan do they have to take Nigerian agriculture out of where it is now in the next 4-8 years? That is what we want to see.
I guess those questions will be asked and they will be answered this time around. There is a fear that there might be a shortage of about 30 million metric tons of food. Now, especially, let me tell you, with maize, soybeans imported from all of these countries, particularly Russia and Ukraine. How much of a concern is this to you?
Well, it's of a great concern to me, okay? You see, before the war between Russia and Ukraine, COVID-19 had its impact on agricultural production and generally food supply and prices. Now, the war between Russia and Ukraine has distorted, okay, the global pattern in terms of agriculture as it concerns trade, okay, production and consumption as well. So because there's this distortion in supplies, you have prices, okay, showing up, and is affecting the cost of which we get some of these commodities locally. Now, if you have that, those commodities are mostly affected are the ones you've mentioned. Now you have maize, you have wheat, you have what's it called, oil, okay, edible oil. You have even fertilizer, sorghum and one soybean that you've mentioned. So when these are distorted and the prices go up, one, it's either the countries that are importing them into their countries will have to pay higher to get them, or countries that ordinarily export will try to also see that they don't have enough in their own country. They want to protect themselves, and that is what they call food protectionism. All right, we saw an example of that happening with India recently, banning sugar exports from their country. Okay, now countries can do that, and if they do that, if they are trying to protect themselves, of course, it's common sense. If you don't have enough to eat in your house, why would you sell the little you have? Now, if that happens, that's where Africa now will be at risk of serious food problem. I know the United Nations is trying to guard against that, but you see, there's a limit to which you can stop countries. They can either place high tariff on their citizens if they want to export such food commodities, okay, or they place outright ban on it. Now, how does Nigeria come into this space? We import wheat heavily. Okay, we've discussed that on this project before, on this program before, Tolu. We import maize. What we are producing locally is not enough. Edible oils we import. Fertilizer, of course, we import from China. Okay, I saw a report recently that the import from China between 2018 and 2022 has risen by around 184%. And fertilizer is part of what we import from there. We also import mackerel. So all these things will affect us. It will affect us because when they come into the country, people will have to pay higher to get them. And so you are reducing, okay, the amount of disposable income available to household, okay, because of that percentage increase that is now on food commodities that they purchase. So countries usually that have households spending around 40% or more, or 50% of their household income on food, will suffer mostly from this. All right. For example, a report from World Bank says that between January and April this year, all right, about 90% of emerging markets or developing countries have had, okay, their food inflation increase by more than 5%. So food inflation in Nigeria currently averages around, I think, 18.8 or thereabout, just a little below 19%. So if you look at that, you now understand how that is going to affect us in a country that is heavily import dependent. So the irony is that you have 70% or over of households involved in agriculture, and you still have a country like this suffering, okay, and being at threat because of what food prices. So that is why we need to have a rethink, and that is why I started by saying these candidates, we shouldn't make it easy for them to just come and talk to us generally. Agriculture can help solve half of the problem that Nigeria is facing now. Of course, there's a Yoruba adage that says, once you remove hunger out of poverty, poverty is half solved.
Well, let's move on quickly. You've touched on AFDB's support of $1.5 billion. Well, like you said, and I agree with you, a lot of interventions, but less to show for most of these interventions. Back home, the central bank has also pumped in more than 1 trillion naira to smallholder farmers and all of that, the Anchors Borrower Scheme and all of this. You're a professional in the agricultural space. How long do we have to wait before we start to see the manifestation of all of these investments?
Well, for some, let's be factual here too. You see, the truth is, where you have a plan, okay, in place to get to somewhere, when the funds come, when the finance comes, it becomes easier for you to apply the funds to get to your destination. But when you don't have a plan that can take you out of where you are to where you are going, and then the money comes, you will draft any plan to meet that money. So that is where the challenge is. I understand the fact that some of these benefits we're expecting won't come immediately. Of course, it takes time for you to lay foundation for what we're talking about. However, if we have a solid plan that can fit this country and plug in, I just told you something now. Before now, we have food map of Nigeria. We know where what comes from, and we know where what is transported to. All right, but with the current current insecurity challenge we are facing, that has been distorted. So how do we get out of that? We don't even know when farmers will be comfortable enough to go to farms. And here we are talking about agriculture on TV. Food don't grow on social media. It doesn't grow on the air. It grows where it is planted. So what plan do we have now? We just say farmers to go back, and they go back and they are being killed. And that is why I said we need a solid plan, structure to be implemented. I'm happy that AFDB is doing all it can. I'm also happy that the central bank is doing all it can. I've said it here on this program. If this foundation is not properly laid, by the time the current drive or move of the CBN goes, and probably goes with the current CBN governor, and another one comes and doesn't see things in the same light, what do we do? How do we go up? Move on from there. So that is part of the challenges that the country needs to face and address. Food is not something we toy with. If we don't know when the war in Ukraine and Russia how long it will last, but according to World Bank report, okay, because of these happenings and these distortions, prices will still continue to increase up to almost ending of 2024, and people need to eat. So if we look at it and wait, we will not be worried about how long. We will be concerned about, let's start something solid and let's start it now. Okay? We don't have to even wait for the candidates to come in. If you build on a foundation that is shaky, it will eventually bring down the entire structure. The agricultural sector in Nigeria needs a complete and total overhaul, a revamp that will be solid enough that even if it is only 20% of household farming in Nigeria, we are sure that they can feed us, and we can also export to other countries.
I go on and on when it comes to the agri sector and, offering your submissions. But this is what time can take today, and I must appreciate you for spending time with us on your birthday. Dr. Matthew Ojo is a researcher and an agribusiness economist. I do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Olu.